Welcome to the Supply Chain Dialogues, Season 3, Episode 5. I'm Daniel Helmig. Let me ask you something. Do you eat? Do you drink? Most of us do daily. It's a necessity, not a lifestyle choice, right? Even if you are on a 16 to 8 or therapeutic fasting kind of setup. Without water, we wouldn't last more than 3 to 5 days, primarily because our bodies are made of 50 to 60% of water. While opinions in the scientific community vary on food, it's clear that after about 3 weeks without it, our bodies shut down, even if we stay hydrated. So why do I mention such grim scenarios? History is filled with times where harvests fail, and even subtle shifts in temperature cause severe food and water shortages. Poor agricultural policies by governments have had similar catastrophic impacts even in the last 200 years. These events have led to mass starvation and significant population declines. Only those who could migrate were able to survive. And here's some perspective on that. If you're curious whether your family was part of these migrants, your DNA heritage might reveal whether your ancestors were among them. Most people living in present-day Europe have genetic ancestry tracing back to ancient hunter-gatherers, early farmers from Near East, and nomadic herders from the Eurasian steppes, among others. Individuals in the Americas often have ancestors who migrated from Asia tens of thousands of years ago, along with most recent ancestors from Europe, Africa, or other parts of the world. In the olden times, therefore, the migration queue often came from the climatic events or rampant misuse of the environment that fed them. Not only did migration occur due to changes in climatic conditions, but many scholars argue now with better temperature data available that whole empires tumbled due to even minute temperature changes. So for example, the Roman Empire, which thrived over 650 years in a warm and moist weather period in Europe, came to an end with the emergence of the late Antique Little Ice Age, roughly from 536 to 660 CE, Common Era. The same applies to cultures in every continent of the world. Societies, and not just dinosaurs, rose and fell due to subtle and sometimes abrupt changes in temperature and climatic conditions. And here's another point of information that many of us don't know about. Up to a third of our food supply, sometimes even 50% in certain regions of the world, comes from small farmers, so-called smallholders. These entrepreneurs, working alongside their families and often migrant laborers, sell their produce to local cooperatives who sell to larger companies, which then either directly or via even larger companies put the food on our store shelves. And similar than in the industrial side, the first part of the supply chain often don't even receive a sustainable living wage. But the climate makes survival even harder for these small farmers. Marginal changes can wreak havoc in their ecosystems and incomes, therefore. They are the canaries in the coal mines, alerting us to dangerous conditions. However, unlike canaries, farmers can adapt and evolve by using innovative food technology and agricultural methods to cope with these changes. Now, the time to stop climate change is long gone. Now we need to focus on how to survive in the environment we created, facing volatile weather conditions, biodiversity loss, and pollution of air, water, and seas. And while most episodes of this podcast focus on the industrial side of our world and efforts to achieve greenhouse gas net zero to indirectly stabilize our climate and secure, therefore, food and water supplies, today, in this episode, we are addressing a more immediate threat. As the Native American tribe Cree proverb says, only when the last tree has been cut down, the last fish caught, and the last stream poisoned, will we realize we cannot eat money. It takes leaders bridging the business and academic, the food innovation and technology science world to secure these 30% of our food supply. Recently, I had the chance to meet Yuan Shu, one of these leaders who is working to make agriculture climate smart and resilient. In our dialogue, she will explain more what climate smart actually is. Yuan and her colleagues collaborate with smallholder farmers to ensure food security, farm income, rural employment, and resilience, bridging the gap between research and practical application. I seldomly do a detailed review of my guests' CVs, but in Yuan's case, I make an exception because it's so revealing what I mean about bridging worlds, both business, academic, and geographies. Yuan studied economics at Hohai University in Nanjing, China, earned her Master of Science degree from the IHE Institute for Water Management, and holds a PhD from the University of Hamburg in Germany. She also completed an MBA at IMD for good measure, one of Switzerland's top management schools, and is a member of the International Max Planck Research School on Earth System Modeling. In her previous role, she served as president of the Swiss Forum of International Agricultural Research. She works at a foundation for sustainable agriculture in Switzerland, focusing on policy research, advocacy platforms, and overseeing their China program. Yuan, it's a pleasure to have you here on the Supply Chain Dialogues. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Daniel. It's my pleasure to be here.
I'm really looking forward to this dialogue because it goes into areas that I'm not that familiar with, and I hope that I can learn a lot from you. And hopefully as well, some of our listeners find that quite interesting. Let's start with your career. You authored and edited 3 books and numerous articles on sustainable agriculture. Can you share how your journey began and what inspired you to focus on agriculture and sustainability in the first place?
I grew up in rural areas in North China, in a province where agriculture is the major economic activity. So we used to support the farming community quite a lot. So from early on, agriculture, rural livelihood, and rural environment are quite close to my heart. During college, when I was studying economics, I was involved in one of my professor's projects focusing on soil conservation and water conservation in one of the most degraded ecosystems of China. And there I discovered my passion for environmental protection. And later on, I've got the opportunity to do further studies on environmental resources management and environmental economics. After my studies, the first big project I led was focusing on understanding farmer youth behavior in a river basin. I conducted hundreds of farm household surveys in rural villages, and I spent 3 months there talking with farmers and trying to get data and information for this research project. I really enjoyed it, and since then I have not left the agriculture sector. After joining the foundation, I had the opportunity to work on a number of interesting projects related to agriculture, food security, and environmental sustainability.
As the head of the Agricultural Policy in China program of the Syngenta Foundation for Sustainable Agriculture, you oversee initiatives to change policies and practices. Please explain a bit more about this. What are the main objectives of your current projects, especially those that aim at climate change and reducing greenhouse gas emissions?
At the foundation, I and my team cover 2 types of projects. So one is focusing on agriculture policy research and advocacy. So this type of project aims to improve the enabling environment for smallholder farming. We do it through influencing policymakers, policy advisors, and regulators to adopt more effective agriculture policies. Based on evidence-based scientific research, we address policy issues and propose policy solutions and reform recommendations. For example, we have studied in a number of countries agriculture subsidy policy to better understand the design of such policies, the implementation, as well as the effectiveness and impact of such policies. For example, recently we did a very in-depth study looking at the soil health and green development subsidy policy in China. And we also have done extensive study looking at fertilizer subsidy and power subsidy in India, and proposed a list of policy recommendations to policymakers. Fortunately, some of the recommendations have been incorporated into government policy and strategies. The second type of project, as the head of China, I'm responsible for are smallholder development project. So this type of project aims to scale up adoption of modern agriculture technology and also sustainable agriculture practices. For instance, the work we are doing in China is focusing on Gansu province, very dry region. And there, what we are promoting is drip irrigation, and we are also promoting greenhouse for vegetable production as a water-saving kind of activity. And we are also introducing a lot of drought-tolerant crop varieties, especially for vegetables and fruit, as well as the potatoes.
This, if I'm not mistaken, that's already goes into the direction what you call climate smart agriculture. So explain that, please, how important this is for smallholder farmers in developing countries.
Yeah, climate smart agriculture is a broad term. It has three main objectives. Number one is to increase the adaptive capacity and resilience of farmers in the face of a changing climate. Second, it intends to reduce the negative impact of agriculture on climate change. While doing both, we also need to keep farming productive and profitable. So essentially, three main pillars are resilience, mitigation, and productivity. And why does it matter? Climate smart agriculture is one of the most important tool or methodology or practices in our view for farmers to deal with climate change. Smallholder farmers are already experiencing devastating effects of climate change. With 1 degree increase in time, crop can lose about 5 to 10% of their yield for major food crops as well as cash crops. And also smallholders, as many other agriculture producers, are contributing to greenhouse gas emission. So to address climate change, we also must address agriculture, including smallholder farmers, as well as deforestation.
Amazing. 5 to 10% based on one degree of climate. And I mean, there are not that many people any longer that believe that we will be able to curb our climate change to 1.5% as it was set up in the Paris Climate Accord. So there have to be some dramatic changes in the way that as well the smallholder farmers have to work in the future so that we still have something to eat, I guess. Huh?
Yes, exactly.
Now, and you mentioned it already, innovation is crucial in addressing climate change, being climate smarter, and promoting then sustainability in agriculture. What are from your perspective, the most significant technological innovations in the sustainable agricultural space from the small farmer perspective? What do you see there? Is it all big technology, or how do I have to think about that?
There are quite many innovations. A few came to my mind. The first one is improved crop varieties, especially climate resilient varieties, which can withstand drought, flood, extreme heat, and other events driven by climate change. The second category is precision agriculture. Basically means the optimal use of agriculture inputs such as the fertilizers, chemicals, and irrigation. This involves the use of sensors, the use of drones, and the use of GPS technology. Another relevant one for smallholder farmers are micro irrigation systems, including drip irrigation, as well as the sprinkler. So this can really improve water use efficiency. Last but not the least, digital agriculture. Okay. So this involves digital apps and also digital platforms, which can not only share information, especially market price information to farmers, they can also link farmers directly with the marketplace. So e-commerce platforms, for example. So these are some of the technologies.
And in one of our pre-discussions, you mentioned something about which I found quite fascinating as well with the digital approach. Tractors similar like Uber that can be used. What is this all about?
So this is one project we are working in Nigeria with a partner called Hello Tractor. So Hello Tractor is a platform which is a Uber-like platform for hiring tractors for farmers. So farmers actually can use their mobile phones or internet connection to book a tractor to do the land preparation for their farmlands.
Amazing.
Yeah, and this kind of technology, again, involves using sensors and also GPS locators, and they can connect the tractors directly to internet to link the data up as well. So this really provide farmers an affordable and accessible way of using mechanization services.
Amazing. What other innovations are you and your colleagues working on? So can you share anything which is not too secret?
Yeah, definitely. At the foundation, we are very active working on crop improvement and seed development. For example, we have worked on quite a few R&D projects trying to develop climate smart and resilient crop varieties. In South Asia, we have developed and marketed a few drought-tolerant maize varieties. And in Ethiopia, over the last 10-15 years, we have developed quite a number of improved teff varieties for local farmers. These varieties are tolerant to drought, to lodging, and also to some of the diseases. Another example is the tropically adapted potatoes. So we have been working with International Potato Center and also a seed company trying to develop new tropically adapted potatoes which are also resistant to late blight diseases. All of these kind of R&D partnerships are public-private partnerships, leveraging the strengths from public sector research and private sector knowledge, and also the on-the-ground presence of NGOs.
Amazing. And when you talk, John, when you talk about drought-resilient crop, how does it even work? I mean, they will need some water, don't they?
Yeah, they need some water, but they need a very limited amount of water. The researchers are selecting or breeding for varieties which can really grow in a low water kind of condition, drought condition.
Amazing.
And they do a lot of field tests
I can imagine.
to make sure this
Okay.
works.
By using probably as well then digital technology again to get this done. So it's quite different than what might have been done hundreds of years ago when you were basically just looking every year, does it work, does it not work? You can do much more, I guess.
Yes.
You work on a range of different programs across many countries. Many of those are related to developing sustainable agricultural practices within, as you mentioned, China, India, other Asian and African countries. How do these practices contribute to greenhouse gas emission reduction and support the livelihood of the local farmers?
Let me give you a few examples. In Bangladesh, since 2019, we have been working on a project called the EWET, introducing water-efficient technologies. We are promoting two types of technologies. So one is we call ultra high-density plantation with drip irrigation for mango production. And the second one is the alternate wetting and drying irrigation technology for rice production.
Okay.
And since then, about 50,000 farmers have benefited from our project. And in terms of mango production, this technology can save about 80% of the water usage compared with traditional mango production. And since mango orchards is considered agroforestry as well, so we have successfully developed a carbon credit project based on the agroforestry concept. Starting from this year, our farmers are going to get the carbon credit as an additional income stream.
Oh, that's cool.
On top of their income coming from this mango production. And for rice as well, the alternate wetting and drying methodology, AWD, is saving a lot of work for farmers, especially who are using flat irrigation for rice paddy. And also it can reduce methane emission by about 35%. So both projects contributed hugely to greenhouse gas emission reduction.
That's amazing because, I mean, I have never had the chance to be at a rice field, but when you look at TV, the typical perception that you have is these rice fields which are completely bathed in water. So that's no longer needed today. Is this different?
This is the most traditional way of doing rice production. It's very popular in many Asian countries for paddy rice, but this is leading to a huge methane emission from rice production. So now this new technology is to called alternate wetting and drying. So when you need water, you put water in. When you don't need, you drain the land and get the water out. So this way, the methane reduction can happen. That's why we and a lot of other projects are working to promote this technology to raise farmers.
Okay. It's probably not that easy to change their ways, I guess. And I understand that, I mean, you talk to a lot of farmers, and you have talked to a lot of farmers. You mentioned it as well when you were talking about what you have done in China. But it seems that education and the community engagement is very vital for achieving this sustainable agriculture. How do you use these elements to ensure the long-term adoption for these practices?
Farmer education is very important for farmers to get knowledge and know-how, especially in relation to new technologies or sustainable practices. However, most farmers are not getting adequate extension services, especially because extension services has been underfunded over the past few decades. One data point I want to share with you, in some regions of Kenya, there is one government extension worker for 2,000 smallholder farmers.
It's terrible. Yeah.
So clearly you can see there is a huge gap in terms of providing farmers with the education and extension services. So at the foundation, what we are doing is to promote agri-entrepreneur program, which we launched about 10 years ago. The basic idea is we train rural young people to become agri-entrepreneurs in their villages or communities, following a 3 to 6 months training, including some practical internship and mentorship as well. These young people set up an agriculture input store where they can provide not only input to farmers, but also advisory services and sometimes market linkage services to smallholder farmers. So far, the foundation has established about 25,000 agri-entrepreneurs across many countries in Asia and Africa. And each agri-entrepreneur is reaching about 100 to 500 smallholder farmers. So we are focusing on strengthening the capacity of agri-entrepreneurs to provide services and products to farmers and also to drive behavior change at the farmer level. So we link agri-entrepreneurs with the climate smart agriculture technology providers and also modern inputs and training as well, so that they can pass on this kind of knowledge and input to smallholder farmers in their communities.
It's amazing, isn't it? I mean, we were talking about massive changes in terms of numbers by utilizing newer technologies or different ways of how to do agriculture. There were 30%, you mentioned 80% in some areas, and even from a governmental perspective, but not only from a government, but as well from the big corporate food and beverage companies. It should be in their interest to train those people, because just tribal knowledge is not going to do that. If you have these massive changes, this needs to be trained. Education is needed everywhere. So specifically then with regard to farmers, it seems so simple, but still it hasn't been done enough. It's good that you guys doing this. This is fantastic.
Yes, and also we focus on women farmers and youth in the villages for our training. So we try to engage as many as the women farmers to become agri-entrepreneurs, so that they can also serve more like underserved women population in the villages. And on top of that, we also leverage digital technology in our agri-entrepreneur network. So we use digital training. We also use the SMS for sharing knowledge and information. Also, we link them with the e-commerce platforms in some instances.
Fantastic. It's good that you mentioned as well the women aspect. I would go through the UN sustainability goals, development goals. You tick a lot of boxes with your work on a day-to-day basis. Fascinating. Now, let's talk about something else, which I really liked when I read through what you are and your colleagues are doing, which is the whole use of KPIs, because it is all good and nice to talk about these things, but as an operations guy by heart, I know that only what you can measure will get actually done. So how do you measure the impact and success of the programs that you and your colleagues are working on?
The new project at the foundation, we usually have a theory of change, And then associated with that, a number of KPIs to measure the progress and impact of that project. As you can imagine, we have very diverse projects. So really a diverse list of KPIs. So since about 6-7 years ago in the foundation, we established a new performance measurement system where we picked about 10 to 12 foundation-wide KPIs, indicators, against which almost all the projects need to report on. This includes number of farmers served, number of women farmers or percentage of women farmers, number of agri-entrepreneurs created, number of jobs created, and also the revenues of agri-entrepreneurs, and also the number of farmers who are trained on climate-smart agriculture, etc. So the type of indicator. Using the performance measurement system plus our monitoring protocol, we collect the data regularly, and then we analyze the data and do our performance management report each year. But this is not enough because these are monitoring data. So to complement this kind of data, we also engage with the independent evaluators or third-party evaluators to do impact evaluation studies. So this is usually for large projects or for project which has been running for 2 or 3 years. We engage an external evaluator to come in to do farm household survey, usually like 300 farmers, and then to better understand what are the impact at the farmer level, including whether there is a change in farmers' income, whether there are changes in adoption of technologies, and also farmers' perceptions on climate change, for example, so this kind of farmer level impact. And these insights and data are very useful for our decision making and also for us to improve our program.
This as well, how you run any corporation in any manufacturing area. You need this feedback loop. I'm an old Six Sigma fan, so therefore, when you look at the DMAIC cycle, the last point is always control. You can change everything, it's wonderful, but at the end, you need to control, learn, adapt, and then define again and take that into the next circle. There is no such thing as do it once right and then forever. You always have to change that. It's good that you do that. Johan, based on your work, what strategies have proven most effective in encouraging this shift among farmers, especially in less developed regions?
I think field level demonstration is very important and works well to show the benefits of a certain innovation. Seeing is believing. Seeing the tangible results can be a powerful motivator of adoption. So the second strategy is to leverage social influence, especially the opinion leaders in the rural community. So that's why we often focus our efforts on lead farmers or opinion leaders in the farming community to convince them that this technology is really good or sustainable. And if they adopt that technology, it will generate a lot of replication or more adoption in the farming community because of their influence and they are trusted by local people. So another strategy is making innovation more accessible and affordable for smallholders. For example, small packs of fertilizers, small packs of seeds, small packs of agrochemicals. These kind of things can make it more accessible and affordable for smallholder farmers. And in relation to that, some incentives provision is also important. If there is a discount on the first use of innovation, or if there is access to credit provided. So this can really lower the risk of adopting new technology. And sometimes if a company can provide a guaranteed minimum price for farmers to produce, this also can encourage farmers to experiment with new practices and new technologies.
That makes perfect sense. The topic of living wage, specifically with smallholder farmers, is a big deal. We haven't talked so far about circular economy, and I know that you're working on that as well. How do you see practices evolving to align more closely with circular principles?
I have seen increasing attention on reducing the fertilizer and the chemical use in agriculture, especially the quantity of such input. In China, a few years ago, the government had 2 action plans for achieving zero growth of fertilizer and pesticide use. And in some other Asian countries, they have also adopted similar strategies. Another one I want to mention is the adoption of regenerative agriculture practices, such as cover cropping or crop rotation, intercropping, or conservation tillage. So this kind of practices not only improve soil health, but also reduce waste. In addition, there is also increasing composting in some places and biochar production. So this kind of technology also contributes to a circular economy. Last but not least, coming back to precision agriculture. So again, using drones, sensors, and GPS technologies to optimize input use and reduce waste. So this is also very much related to circular economy.
Fascinating. I mean, there's a lot going on in this space. I did not know that at all. Next, and we can go one step higher. Okay, circular economy is driven via regulators. So let's talk about policy. From your perspective, what fundamental policy changes or interventions are needed to accelerate the transition towards more sustainable and greenhouse gas efficient agricultural systems globally? What is your view?
Really, I think policy plays a critical role in shaping the future of agriculture and also its environmental impact. Firstly, I think comprehensive climate policies encompassing agriculture is very much needed. So government need to formulate such policy and implement such policy. And I realized that agriculture climate strategy policy is often working in separate dimensions. So there is a lack of coherence or streamlining of climate targets, climate strategy across sectors. So I think we need to work on that to bring forestry, environmental sector, even energy sector more closely to agriculture sector, together to establish a common climate target and strategy, so to speak. Apart from that, I think policies to encouraging financial incentive for agriculture, especially sustainable agriculture, are very important, like carbon credit, agriculture subsidies, and even tax credits. So these kind of incentives will help farmers to adopt more sustainable agriculture. Another important policy I want to mention is the policies which encourage increasing investment into research and development, both from the public sector and private sector, because we do need a lot of new technologies to deal with climate change and to make agriculture more sustainable, and R&D is very fundamental to come up with this kind of innovation. Last but not the least, I think we need to establish regulation and standards for sustainable agriculture practices as well as for ESG disclosure. So in this context, mandatory disclosure based on ESG framework will be very helpful to achieve sustainable agriculture in the longer term.
Completely agree. Looking to the future, what are the emerging trends and technologies that will be most influential from your perspective in integrating sustainability and global agricultural practices overall to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and lead to better adaptation at the end?
So there are a couple of technologies. Precision agriculture, the continuous advancement of precision agriculture technologies can really help optimize yields and reduce waste, involving remote sensing or using of drones and even AI-driven analytics. These kind of technologies can really help farmers to make better decisions. In relation to that, also digital farming platforms. These platforms can provide real-time data to farmers to support farmers to make good decisions on their crop management. Another one is biotechnology and gene editing. So this type of technology has huge potential to develop climate resilient varieties, which can withstand heat, drought, and floods and other kind of stresses to the agriculture system. And also they have potential to develop new varieties which need less nutrients to grow, for example. So really there is huge potential there. And another one I want to mention is carbon capture and sequestration. So there are emerging technologies in this space as well, especially on soil carbon management, as well as direct air capture or biochar production. So all of these technologies can support greenhouse gas emission reduction. And the last one I want to mention is renewable energy. So renewable energy for agriculture, especially farm mechanization and also for food processing and transportation logistics. So this can also be a game changer.
So For those of you who are listening in that and so far were thinking, this is not my industry, I do not have to care necessarily. A, you want to eat, B, you want to drink, and C, there are greenhouse gas emission standards that you have to fulfill. And by getting involved in this area and branch out, you might be able to do something good for all of us and do something good for your shareholders and for your company. Well, I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Supply Chain Dialogues. If you do, please subscribe on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, or any other central podcast platform. And if you are a subscriber, tell someone who likes to eat and drink like you do. Perhaps when you encounter a local farmer next time, engage in a conversation about their understanding of climate-smart practices. And even if their views may not align with your urban or suburban political perspective, consider purchasing their product at fair prices to sustain their livelihoods. Supporting them is paramount over engaging in political debates, often fueled by simple, uninformed bias. If you're interested in learning more about this or other topics that we covered, you can sign up for online or face-to-face trainings, which is available on our company website and soon on YouTube. Or you can book a chat with me to explore the art of the possible for your company, either via seminars, coaching dialogues, or complete projects. We always find something that adds value to our clients. With that, stay safe, be bold, and see you in 2 weeks. These are the Supply Chain Dialogues produced and copyrighted by Helmig Advisory AG in 2024.